Somewhere beneath the dunes of the Sahara, there is a body that has been waiting for 4,000 years to be found. No coffin, no tomb, just sand and the shape of a man curled against the wind, his hand still pressed to his chest, as if in his final moment he was trying to hold in whatever warmth was left. He was not a soldier, he was not a king, he was a traveler, one of thousands who across 10,000 years of human history looked out at an ocean of sand stretching beyond the horizon and chose to walk into it anyway. Why would anyone do that? Why would entire civilizations risk everything, their lives, their families, their fortunes, to cross a landscape that kills without warning, where the ground itself seems to want you dead? The answer to that question built empires. It moved gold, salt, silk, and ideas across continents. It connected worlds that should never have touched, and it forced the human body and the human mind to adapt in ways that still astonish scientists today. This is the story of how we crossed the uncrossable and what it cost to do it. To understand why crossing a desert was one of the most dangerous things a human being could do, you first have to understand what a desert actually is. Not empty, not lifeless, something far more dangerous than that. A landscape actively, patiently hostile to the human body. By day, the surface of the Sahara can reach temperatures of over 70 degrees Celsius, hot enough to burn skin through the soles of a sandal. By night, that same ground can drop below freezing because sand holds almost no heat. There is nowhere to hide from either extreme, no shade that lasts, no shelter that stays. The human body was never built for this. We evolved as a species of sweat, one of the most efficient cooling systems in the animal kingdom. But sweat requires water, and water is the one thing a desert refuses to give. A person walking in desert heat can lose more than a liter of water every hour. Without replacing it, confusion sets in within a day. Organ failure can follow within 2 or 3. And then there is the land itself, deceptive, shifting, memoryless. Dunes move, landmarks vanish overnight, buried or exposed by the wind. A path walked yesterday may not exist today. There are no rivers to follow, no mountains to aim for on the horizon, sometimes nothing at all but sand meeting sky in every direction. A horizon that offers no information, no promise, no clue. This is the world that early humans and later civilizations had to face, not once, but again and again for thousands of years, not because they were foolish, because on the other side of that sand was something worth dying for. Long before camels, before maps, before writing itself, humans were already crossing deserts. Roughly 70,000 years ago, waves of early Homo sapiens began moving out of Africa, and one of the most direct paths out led straight through the Arabian desert. Archaeologists have found stone tools scattered along ancient dried-up riverbeds, evidence that this desert was not always a desert at all. During certain climate windows, called Green Sahara periods, the Sahara itself transformed. Rainfall increased. Rivers ran where there is now only rock and dust. Lakes formed deep in what is today one of the driest places on Earth. Rock art discovered at sites like Tassili and Nadjer in modern Algeria shows swimmers, cattle herds, and hippos, painted by people living in a Sahara that looked nothing like the one we know now. Then, around 6,000 years ago, the climate shifted again. The rains retreated. The lakes dried into cracked white basins. The Green Sahara began its slow death, and the people living within it faced an impossible choice: migrate or die with the land. This is the moment the desert stopped being merely difficult and became something to be survived. And survival meant one thing above all else: learning the secret the desert guarded most jealously: water.
Every desert culture that endured shares one trait, an almost supernatural understanding of where water hides. Bedouin trackers of Arabia could read the ground itself, noticing where certain plants grew slightly greener, where the sand held a subtly darker shade, signs invisible to an untrained eye, but unmistakable to someone raised reading the land as a language. Beneath dry riverbeds called wadis, water often still flowed, not on the surface, but a few feet under the sand, filtered and cool. Digging a shallow well in the right spot could mean the difference between a caravan's survival and its disappearance. In the deserts of Persia, engineers developed something even more extraordinary, the qanat. Underground tunnels, sometimes stretching for kilometers, carried water from mountain aquifers to desert settlements, all without a single drop lost to evaporation under the punishing sun. Some qanats built over 2,000 years ago are still in use today. It was an invisible, engineered river running beneath the world's most unforgiving land. And then there were the oases, islands of green scattered like lifelines across an ocean of sand. To modernize, an oasis might look like a lucky patch of palm trees. To ancient travelers, it was closer to sacred, a named place, remembered, passed down through generations like a piece of scripture. Travel 3 days south from the Black Rock and you will find water. Entire trade routes were built not on convenience, but on the exact spacing of oases, because a caravan could only carry enough water to survive the distance between one green lifeline and the next. Get that distance wrong, and there would be no second chance. This is the quiet, terrifying arithmetic that every desert crossing was built on. Distance, water, time. Get any one of them wrong, and the desert would not forgive you. For thousands of years, deserts remained nearly impassable to large-scale trade. Humans could survive brief crossings on foot, following ancestral knowledge from oasis to oasis. But moving goods, real wealth in bulk, across hundreds of miles, that required something else, something that did not yet exist. Then, somewhere around 3,000 years ago, in the deserts of southern Arabia, that changed forever. The domestication of the camel was not simply the taming of an animal, it was the invention of a new kind of technology, one written not in metal or stone, but in flesh and evolution itself. A camel can drink over 100 liters of water in one sitting and store it not as fat in a single reserve, but distribute it through its bloodstream and tissue, releasing it slowly over days. Its hump is not a water tank at all, as popular myth once claimed. It's a reservoir of fat, allowing the animal to go without food for extraordinary stretches, while its body manages water loss with a precision no other large mammal can match. A camel can lose up to a quarter of its body weight in water and survive, where a human would already be dead. Its wide, padded feet spread across soft sand instead of sinking. Its nostrils can close against blinding windstorms. Even its blood cells are uniquely oval-shaped, allowing them to keep flowing even as the animal becomes severely dehydrated. In short, evolution had already built the perfect desert machine. Humans simply had to learn to walk beside it. And once they did, everything changed.
Caravans that might once have carried a handful of desperate travelers could now carry entire economies. A single camel could bear over 100 kilograms of cargo across distances that would have been suicidal on foot. Salt, gold, frankincense, silk, ideas, religions, languages, all of it now had a vessel capable of crossing the world's most lethal terrain and arriving on the other side. The desert had not been defeated, but for the first time, it could be negotiated with. By the time of the great trans-Saharan trade networks roughly 1,000 years ago, caravans crossing the desert were no longer small bands of survivors, they were moving cities. Historical accounts describe caravans of over 10,000 camels stretching for miles across the dunes, carrying salt mined from deposits in the middle of the Sahara toward the kingdoms of West Africa, where salt was so scarce it was traded pound for pound against gold. In the other direction, gold, ivory, and enslaved people moved north, feeding the treasuries of North African and Mediterranean powers. At the heart of this trade stood cities that modern travelers rarely think of as centers of world history: Timbuktu, Sijil Massa, Ghadames, places built almost entirely around their position on a route through hell. Timbuktu, in particular, became not just a trading post, but a center of scholarship, its libraries holding manuscripts on astronomy, law, and medicine, funded by wealth that had crossed the most dangerous desert on Earth to get there. But here is the part rarely spoken aloud in the grand telling of trade history. For every successful crossing, there were caravans that simply vanished. No wreckage, no warning, just gone. Swallowed somewhere between one oasis and the next, victims of a sudden sandstorm that could bury 100 camels within hours, or a well that had silently run dry since the last traveler passed through, or a guide who made one wrong calculation in a landscape that offers no room for error. In 1805, a caravan of an estimated 2,000 people attempting to cross the Sahara died from thirst after their wells failed, an entire community erased from the historical record by nothing more than the absence of water. This was not a rare tragedy. It was the desert's standing price for those who miscalculated. Every trade route across every desert on Earth carries this same silent ledger. The ones who made it celebrated in songs and city monuments, and the ones who didn't, remembered only by the bones the sand occasionally gives back. If water was the desert's cruelest test, direction was its second. There are no roads in a sand sea, no signs, often no fixed landmarks at all. So how did ancient travelers find their way across hundreds of miles of featureless terrain and arrive, days later, at a single well the width of a house? The answer lay above them. Bedouin and Tuareg guides memorized the sky the way modern travelers might memorize a subway map: the position of the pole star, the rotation of specific constellations through the night, even the subtle color shifts of the horizon at dawn and dusk. Some guides, called Kabir in Arabic, meaning the knowing one, were revered figures, capable of navigating for weeks through terrain with almost no distinguishing features, relying on memory passed down across generations, wind patterns etched into dune shapes, and an intimate reading of the stars that modern engineers using GPS still study with respect. In Arabia, sailors and desert travelers alike used a system of star navigation that would later influence maritime techniques across the Islamic world, eventually contributing to instruments like the astrolabe, a device that could calculate a traveler's position using nothing but the angle of a star above the horizon. Even the wind left its signature. Skilled guides could identify their location by studying the ripple patterns carved into dune faces, patterns shaped consistently by prevailing winds over months or years, a kind of natural compass etched permanently into the landscape by the very forces that made it so dangerous. To an outsider, it might have looked like magic. It was not magic. It was generations of accumulated observation, refined by consequence, because in the desert, bad navigation did not mean being late. It meant dying quietly, a few miles from water you would never find. But surviving the desert was never only a physical challenge, it was a psychological warfare waged silently between the human mind and an environment engineered, almost cruelly, to break it. Heat and dehydration do not just damage the body, they distort the mind. Severe dehydration causes confusion, hallucination, and impaired judgment, precisely the conditions in which a traveler is most likely to make a fatal decision. And the desert offers its own uniquely cruel illusion to prey on a failing mind: the mirage. A mirage is not a hallucination in the traditional sense. It is a real optical phenomenon caused by layers of air at different temperatures bending light near the ground, creating the illusion of water pooling on the horizon.
To a traveler already exhausted, dehydrated, and desperate, that illusion could be catastrophic, luring the delirious off course, wasting precious energy and water, chasing something that was never there. Historical travel writers, from medieval Arab geographers to later European explorers crossing the Sahara, wrote with a kind of reverent fear about the psychological toll of the open desert, the way silence itself became oppressive, the way distances seemed to warp and stretch, the way isolation could unravel a traveler's mind long before thirst finished the job. This is why desert cultures did not travel alone if they could help. Caravans were not just an economic strategy, they were a psychological survival mechanism, a shared burden, a witness to keep you tethered to reality when the horizon itself seemed to be lying to you. Because in the desert, the greatest danger was rarely a single catastrophic event. It was the slow, compounding erosion of judgment, one bad decision at a time, each one seeming reasonable in the moment, until the traveler was no longer walking towards salvation, but simply walking. The Sahara looms largest in popular imagination, but it was far from the only desert that shaped human history. Along the Silk Road, merchants faced the Taklamakan Desert in western China, a name that in local legend has been translated to mean the place you go in but don't come out. Unlike the Sahara's dunes, the Taklamakan combined suffocating heat with brutal winter cold and violent sandstorms capable of burying entire caravans within minutes. Archaeologists have recovered remarkably preserved mummies from its dry basin, some over 3,000 years old, their clothing and features so intact that scientists could study the wool of their garments and the contents of their final meals, silent witnesses to lives spent moving through one of the harshest trade corridors on Earth.
Merchants crossing the Taklamakan relied on a very different survival network, a chain of oasis kingdoms like Dunhuang and Kashgar, cities that became centers of extraordinary cultural exchange precisely because they sat at the only survivable points along an otherwise lethal route. Buddhist monks, Silk Road merchants, and eventually diplomats and pilgrims from as far as the Mediterranean and Japan passed through these desert gateways, carrying not just silk and spices, but religions, languages, and technologies that reshaped the ancient world. Meanwhile, in the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, the incense trade route carried frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia toward the Mediterranean, sustaining kingdoms like Saba and Nabatea. The extraordinary rock-cut city of Petra, carved directly into desert sandstone, owed its wealth entirely to its position as a critical waypoint on this route, a city that could not have existed without travelers desperate enough and prepared enough to cross the sands to reach it. Each of these deserts demanded its own specialized knowledge, its own generations of trial and fatal error, its own quiet heroes whose names history rarely recorded, but whose accumulated wisdom allowed trade, religion, and civilization itself to cross landscapes that, by every physical measure, should have remained permanently empty of human footprints. For most of human history, crossing a desert meant accepting an uncomfortable truth. Some percentage of every journey would not survive. But sometime around the medieval period, something shifted. Desert crossing stopped being purely acts of desperate survival and started becoming refined, almost scientific operations, layered with centuries of accumulated knowledge. Consider the account of the great Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta, who in the 14th century crossed the Sahara as part of a trade caravan heading toward the Malian Empire. His writings describe a journey of extraordinary logistical precision. Guides who knew every well by name, scouts sent ahead to confirm water sources before the main caravan committed to a route, strict rationing schedules, and a deep, almost ritual respect for the desert's power to kill without warning. This was the turning point, not a single dramatic invention, but the slow accumulation of survival knowledge into something that functioned almost like a science.
Route maps passed down through trading families. Standardized caravan sizes calculated to balance safety against the water supply required to sustain them. Professional guides whose entire lives were dedicated to the mastery of a single, lethal landscape. The desert had not changed. It is and remains exactly as hostile today as it was 10,000 years ago. What changed was the human relationship to it. From a species gambling blindly against an indifferent landscape, to cultures that had turned survival itself into an inherited, almost sacred body of expertise. And this, perhaps, is the real reveal at the heart of this story. We tend to imagine ancient desert crossings as acts of raw courage alone, and they were. But courage was never enough on its own to survive a landscape like this. What actually crossed the Sahara, the Taklamakan, and the sands of Arabia was not simply bravery. It was knowledge, refined by death and passed forward by the living. Today, satellite navigation can pinpoint a traveler's location to within a few meters. Climate-controlled vehicles cross deserts that once took camel caravans weeks to traverse in a matter of hours. It is easy from this distance to view the desert crossings of history as a solved problem, an obstacle our ancestors faced and that we have since simply engineered our way past. But the desert has not changed. It is still there, exactly as hostile as it was 10,000 years ago. Every year, people still die attempting to cross deserts. Migrants, hikers, the stranded and the unprepared. A sobering reminder that the fundamental laws the desert enforces have never been repealed. Heat, thirst, distance, judgment. These remain exactly as unforgiving now as they were 4,000 years ago. What we are left with when we study these ancient crossings is not simply a catalog of routes and dates and trade goods. It is a portrait of what human beings are capable of when survival demands it. The extraordinary capacity to observe, adapt, and pass knowledge forward across generations, turning even the most hostile environment on the planet into something that could, carefully and respectfully, be crossed. The camel caravans are largely gone now. The Kabir guides who once read the stars like a written language have mostly passed their knowledge into museum archives and academic papers. But the roots they carved into the world remain. In the cities that still stand at their crossroads, in the trade languages that still echo through markets from Marrakesh to Kashgar, in the quiet, permanent proof that human beings, when given no other choice, will find a way to cross even a sea with no water in it at all. Somewhere beneath the dunes, that traveler from 4,000 years ago is still there, curled against a wind that has never stopped blowing. He did not survive his crossing, but because of everyone who learned from journeys like his, who studied the wells, mapped the stars, and passed the knowledge forward one dangerous mile at a time, countless others eventually did.